of braking underneath me, but given a couple of weeks, we should be out here. Let's go work on the John Deere. And this isn't safe.
Then get your butt off of it.
Hi guys, Redneck Computer Geek here with RCG Racing. So we're going to be working on retuning and redoing this ice racer. Whether there are races this year or not, we have a pond and we are going to go rip it up this season. So there's a few things. When we started this build last season, we did it on a budget. We did it as shoestring as possible, cutting corners, cutting tread, everywhere that we could. We spent money in places that mattered most. We bought the actual tire screws. We bought an actual gas pedal assembly. Otherwise than that, we skated through the entire season and was in the lower part of the upper group of racers for a grand total of about $180. Now, this was supposed to be my return and spend some money. That didn't happen, and it's not going to. Unfortunately, on Thanksgiving Day, one of my cats was attacked. It ended up having to go to the veterinary's office. It ended up having to go in for surgery. Had a massive giant staph infection. Its entire neck swelled up. All kinds of things that would make the average person puke came out of its neck. And $500 in the hole later, the budget for this has utterly been washed down the drain. So, I say we continue the budget of as little as possible. I say that we drop the whole thing as low as we can to the ground. We get the seat down onto the frame. We get the hood down in. We get the steering column down in. We drop everything as low as possible. Get this thing to the point that it's an actual racer and not this gargantuan monster machine. Got the gas tank out of the way at this point. So now we can sit down in here on this board and take a look at a couple of things. So if I want to sit all the way to the frame, the problem is this shifter is right here. And if I have it in reverse, then the lever is currently touching my butt cheek. The other thing is, for me to sit down to the frame without moving the shifter, Now, I'm in insulated double layer fleece lined pants right now. And normally I race with a full set of coveralls on, which makes my legs even stiffer. So I'd have to figure out a way to get that pedal to push forward or to go forward or something if I leave it in this position. The other thing is I could potentially sit further back into the system. Except for if I position as far back as I can right now, you'll see my knife is currently sitting on here. Yet again, insulated thick pants, and normally I wear full-length coveralls when I race, because we're in 20 degrees. So if I go to try and get into fourth gear, which is what I use with the racing, I'm currently wedged right up against myself right now. Now, granted, if I was sitting up here, about 2 inches taller, it would pass underneath my butt cheek. So things to think about. Also, steering obviously needs to get dropped down. I did confirm that this is a 5/8 shaft, which means that I can use the wheel bearing conversions that I used on John's machine in order to be able to do this. And drop this and collar it wherever it is I want it, and then weld a stanchion. I've pretty much concluded at this point that the only reason to keep the dash would be to hold down the floor pan right here. And I haven't quite decided as far as that's concerned yet. But obviously, we have tons of space for a gas tank. We've got tons of space for a dashboard. And we're leaving the battery on the back for the extra weight anyway. So, we'll go from here. First big thing on the checklist that I'm going to show you in a little bit is the belt system in this thing is horrifically stupid. I managed to rig it together. It raced but it ate a belt every single race day, and most of the time it ate an idler pulley also. I wanted to point out while I'm here that this is done wrong because I was too in a hurry and too lazy last year to take this top pan off and get to this. So right now this is set up with a keeper here and a keeper here, and these are all well and good, but that's not the way it really should be. It should be a keeper here, a keeper here, a keeper here, and preferably what's even better is to take a piece of like 3/16 plate and trace out the size of this pulley and then bend up tabs all the way around from here all the way back so that it cups in this pulley, so that this belt, when it releases, comes off of the inside of this pulley and lets it go, but at the same time it also allows as much slack as possible to go up through the system. What'll happen if you have something like this is that during the time that this is a fresh belt and it hasn't warmed up, when you clutch it, it will release off of this pulley. But as this belt warms up, it becomes more flexible, and when you clutch, it will come down onto this pulley, and it will come down onto your engine pulley, and it will begin to every once in a while cycle the system through. Or the worst thing that'll happen is it'll decide to throw the belt, which is why when we come around here and we look in on this system, you're going to see this. This belt keeper here on this side is because when this system heats up, this belt wants to come off on this side. So this is just a really thin piece that's bolted through over on here so that I can be able to put it in place and slide the belt through. And so every race day was $45, so we need to fix that. But let's talk about a bunch of other stuff here. One of the first things we'll point out is this hood. Now, I've had some of the other racers get a hold of me and talk to me about this hood and trying to not cut it up any more than I have to. There's a brace that's down here in behind this section of hood. So if we flip this up, you'll see right there is the brace. So if you cut that, nothing holds the structure together up here, and the things just fall apart. There's hardly anything. You see that? You got almost nothing structurally holding the rest of it together. So the suggestion that a bunch of people have talked about is taking this bracket, which already extends over the top, and extending this out far enough to set the bracket down and have that right there line up with that. But the problem that I see there with everybody's suggestion is that if I turn that, I'm going to go straight into that hood. So the monster hood look may or may not have to stay. No matter what, the steering column is going to get dropped down once I drop my body down into the frame there. This is just nothing but plastic junk. It's literally just a thrown-on plastic top. Unfortunately, the steering shaft on this is 5/8, which means that the steering knuckle piece that I bought isn't going to work on this, but I think I've got an alternative idea. I tore down a Ford Fusion and I saved the steering knuckles out of that. And I'm going to bet we can probably use those in order to go and drop that and tilt it back a little bit. But none of that matters because the belt system has to be entirely redone. And this is a fan gear steering system, which I'll show you later is all in the way. And here is our MTD steering system. So as you can see, it's a drop-down fan system by MTD. And John Deere decided to buy out the rights to be able to use these. And the only thing that really changed with these is that they upgraded this to being a spline shaft end, and it's a little bit stronger than an MTD, but literally an MTD shaft and spline and everything swaps in and out. The fan also swaps with MTD. They drilled out the holes to put slightly bigger bolts in and a slightly thicker rod, but this is also an MTD design. You can actually swap the MTD parts in. Anyways, so this shaft goes all the way through everything. It's totally in the way. You cannot change the belt without popping that shaft all the way out through the system. The other thing is trying to get it clearance down through here to be able to get your belt in is impossible, because this shaft runs through the system and makes it so that you cannot get the belt in and out without first undoing 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why it is that dry belt installation videos for these machines are a little scarce on YouTube, because nobody wants to do them because you have to remove all of this. On top of that, the entire braking system is in the way of the belt system. My theory is that if we take and we run the plasma cutter around this nice and quickly, because this will drop out easy enough. We run the plasma cutter around that real quick. We take the plasma cutter and we slice out all of this that's possible to slice out. We take this, we slide it down the bar to as far into this as possible, and then that should let us run a straight line, which is what we want to do. We want to run from there as straight line as we possibly can into that 5-inch pulley on the back. And we already said we were going to redo all of that around that pulley anyway, so that is what it is. We're going to redo that, and we'll go from there. Now, back here, the other thing this cost me every single race was a fuel filter, because that is metal right there, and that is a gas tank filled with metal. That tube, that's my pickup tube going straight to my fuel filter. See that right there? So we're going to get rid of this entire gas tank assembly. That is going away. We're going to put in a small little tank. A friend of mine in the racing community suggested these. These are Dorman engine coolant things. So these right here, you drill them out a little bit or whatever. You've got the mounts, and they should easily be able to fit under the hood here somewhere. You know, right there on the back side of the motor. I mean, you literally could bolt one of these right directly to the side of the motor if you didn't care about the hood. So that right there is what I'm planning to run for a gas tank in this. We don't need a big gas tank. We just need a functional gas tank that'll last for horsing around a little bit. Tires on the front. Turf savers fully cut out and everything, got plenty of grip. There wasn't much of an issue there. These, on the other hand, I deliberately pumped them to 15 PSI last race season. So see, it makes a hump there, but I never cut these out, and I should have. So we're going to grab our tire cutter this season. We're going to slice every single bit of this out and see if that helps us get a little bit more grip. Because, like I said, this is going to be discount as can be. Now, we've got a tire groover that I bought. It's a Tread Doctor that I picked up. Well, they were reasonably priced. I think it was like 65 bucks. But when you consider that in order to cut that tread, I had to use a chisel, use up at least a tank of propane or MAP gas. You ruin a good solid chisel, so there's $20 down the drain. Plus the cost of propane and MAP gas has gone up. I think that's a good investment for this year, especially since we've got more that we plan to play with. But getting back to it, we want to see if we can do a governor delete on this Kohler Courage. Theoretically, the governor is just on the other side of the upper plate for this motor, and supposedly it's easy to get these off. These motors are actually notorious for having the upper plate bolts come loose anyway. So we might as well get in there and check it before we decide to roll this thing up into 4,000 RPMs again and pull the governor while we're in there. As it is right now, we still have the Ghetto Governor delete on here. If you're interested in that, I'll post a link in the description to be able to see how we did the Ghetto Governor delete. Now this right here is our fuel pump. This is the pulse side. This is the side coming in from the gas tank, and this is the side going out to the carb. Now I can see there's something that pretends to be gasoline in the fuel filter, but I want to see if we actually have anything coming out of this pump, because as it is right now, I don't think there is. So let's give it a... There we go. So we had nothing at all coming out of it. Now we've got gas. Oh, another thing I wanted to change about this was that the way that this fuel pump works, running it around like this, it actually hits on the choke lever. And when the choke lever comes back up through and it hits on the gas, it won't actually fully unchoke, which isn't exactly a good thing when you're trying to rev it for all its beans. So let's try it again, full choke, and... You know, I was just thinking I probably should have checked to see if it even had oil in it, because these Kohlers are notorious for blowing out the crank seal. Oh yeah, that's got oil. There really is a special place in engineering hell for the person that came up with this idea. So most of the time on floor pans like this, usually you have like a bolt there, maybe a bolt there, a bolt there, a bolt there, and so on, and then the whole thing comes up and off the back. Not in the case of an MTD design. Nope, that whole pan has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts all the way through it underneath the dashboard. And this thing here, I wanted to remove in order to get out, but I'm going to have to do it later, because the bracket that that's part of right there is also for the steering shaft bearing in the top. And it's not mounted to the metal piece like I was hoping. It's mounted to the underside of this bunch of plastic right in here. So, yeah, that's going to get adorable real quick. I'm going to get the seat off, undo the bolts that are underneath there, and then get a swivel socket and see what happens when I hit all of those. There we go. We got that all pulled over the top, and you can see right here, see, this is the parking brake. And so all of this stupid brake assembly, whatever, needs to get out of the way. because that's our dry belt right there. And that right there, you can see the outside of it, is the pulley that we kept blowing up after every race day. And so it brings it out and around, and then this has to come back through to another stupid pulley that's in underneath here. And the whole thing is dumb, but we'll get to that in a sec once we jack up the front end. For right now, we're going to get this off of here and get all of this off of here, and then we'll jack it up.
Morning.
Alright, so in the usual strangeness of John Deere, this thing is mostly metric. These were 14 millimeter, so that gets that off of there. Every bolt around there was a 10, and these are also apparently 10 millimeter. Now we're going to see if I pop these off. They should be the last thing in order to get this pan to come loose. There we go. Alright, we'll grab the camera from John here. Alright, so this is the proprietary gas tank that we're getting rid of in order to set us down. So we want our seat sitting way down here as much as possible, but this is what we were talking about earlier that's going to be in the way. So we're going to try and get right down on top of this and call it good. And as usual, because it's a Kohler single, there is gas everywhere underneath the carb. So we're going to have to address that also. But we're making progress. We're going to rip this out. We're going to set it all off to the side and go from there. The other thing is, a lot of people have asked about lowering this machine. As you can see, the axle sits just barely in front of the motor. So you could potentially cut it off and lift this front axle up into here to gain yourself roughly about 2 inches. And that's something that I'm debating doing at this time. There we go. That comes around there, goes down through, and the reason for that is because this right here is our lever that runs our clutch right here, and this is our brake, which is on the same piece. My theory is that if we take and we run the plasma cutter around this nice and quickly, because this will drop out easy enough. We run the plasma cutter around that real quick. We take the plasma cutter and we slice out all of this that's possible to slice out. We take this, we slide it down the bar to as far into this as possible, and then that should let us run a straight line, which is what we want to do. We want to run from there as straight line as we possibly can into that 5-inch pulley on the back. And we already said we were going to redo all of that around that pulley anyway, so that is what it is. We're going to redo that, and we'll go from there. There we go, guys. We're going to call that video right there because we're starting to get a little long in the tooth on this explanation. There's a lot here that I'm planning on working on and trying to sort out. If you'd like, over on atltf.com, down in the description, you'll see there is a link. You can go to that and you'll see pre-YouTube build videos and discussions. The guys over there are a really good off-road group. They also do some racing, they do some pulling, they do some dragster stuff and things like that. Basically, if you do stuff with a lawn tractor that's not conventional, there's probably a build over on ATLTF for you. Stay tuned, guys. We're going to be cranking on this thing. We've got about 3 inches worth of ice on the pond right now, which means we only need another 3 in order to be safe for large ATVs and stuff. And this thing definitely doesn't weigh as much as an ATV, so we'll be out there soon. Thanks for the support. Keep building.